Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. This one's going to be a little personal. You tend to do a little soul searching when you've had to do some soul searching. It gets to be habitual. When I started my hardcore treatments for cancer at the beginning of 2015, it started with filling out paperwork that was only of use to anyone in case I died. And the second or third time you put your signature on something that essentially validates the very real possibility that the morning after you hand someone this paperwork, someone will have to read it, you get some concerns, and you have to do a gut check. The personal mortality gut check is not an easy gut check to pass. It's got a really high difficulty class. You've got very few bonuses to it. Fortunately, if you are lucky enough to survive the procedures for which you are giving people paperwork, you can take a gut check as an extended action. I've developed a tendency in my playing and running of role-playing games since I have come back to the activity after being down and out for a few months. And that tendency is a certain amount of ruthlessness. There's nothing wrong with running a ruthless player character. There's nothing wrong to a certain amount of ruthlessness on the part of the game master, as long as you retain that understanding that everyone's all here in this room rolling dice to have fun. Case in point, my friend Josh in our Wednesday night group, Warriors of Wednesday, is running a really interesting variant of a old Dungeons and Dragons setting using the victory system. It's the Dragon Star setting, where there is a advanced stellar civilization that you can find your way moving into that utilizes magic instead of technology, and it's essentially Dungeons and Dragons in space. We've taken that a little bit further. I've talked a little bit about these characters before, but I'm playing an assassin, playing Gelt. And over time, I am starting to notice more and more of a tendency towards being ruthless. I've got a habit of playing characters that are somewhat sociopathic, which probably says more about me than it does them. Characters who don't have standard limitations on their thinking or their morals or their ethics. It's all personal because other people's feelings and concerns are only marginally important to them. Normally I play that as a high-functioning sociopath, as someone who can get by in society, who understands how everything operates, and will put limits on themselves so that they can function with the group or in society, but I've gone a little crazy in games. And that's probably so I don't go a little crazy out of game. Role-playing can be therapy. There's an attitude I had to develop when I was sick. They say that a lot of the process of getting through something like cancer, of dealing with the treatments and the side effects, is you need to have a strong mental game. And there are other studies that say that having a strong mental game doesn't really affect your outcome for the treatments so much, which I tend to doubt. Because most of the people I know who've had good recoveries, myself included, have put a lot of effort into strong mental game, having a constant flow of visualization that what they were battling in their bodies was also being battled in their mind. A very determined effort to beat whatever it was that was trying to kill them. Strong mental game is certainly important for recovery. Recovery from the cancer is one thing. Recovery from the treatment is something else entirely. The cancer was not only reduced and weakened by the chemotherapy that I was taking 8 hours a day, once a week, for 7 weeks, but it was burned out of my body by radioactive lasers. 35 minutes a day, 5 days a week, 7 weeks. The white mask on the shelves behind me is what they held me down to the table by for those sessions. Couldn't really use it for anyone else afterwards, so I got to bring it home. Recovering from that is a process that takes years. They say that even after they've done the treatments and they've done the scans to discover that you no longer have any cancer cells in you, so far everything's been clean, good PET scans, it's 5 years. It's 5 years until you're considered cured, until you've been properly through recovery. 5 years from diagnosis. So that'll be the end of 2020 for me. And recovery is where strong mental game is really important. I couldn't walk right. I couldn't talk. I couldn't eat. I was on enough painkillers to float a battleship. More painkillers than they'd ever seen one person on at the palliative care clinic that I was attending. And, well, all of that is still taking a toll on me. So I had to develop a mental game. I had to develop a strategy. It's one that I've had for a very, very long time. And it's about time I talked about it. I'm a daydreamer. That comes as a surprise to no one, I'm sure. Someone who's creative or who writes obviously daydreams, and perhaps even daydreams a lot. And I'm not a daydream a lot person. I'm not a casual daydreamer. I'm not even a professional daydreamer. I'm an obsessive daydreamer. I choose the music that I listen to by my ability to visualize scenes of action and combat and suspense too. I limit a lot of my watching of television or movies or what have you to things that feed into my active imagination. Role-playing games is the language and system by which I'm able to take the things that have shown up in my head and share them, because there really isn't another way. Writing doesn't quite seem to cover it. It's not active or interactive enough. There is so much in here to explore after this time of doing this that a lot of it just happens automatically. I started daydreaming very seriously, well, when I moved from California to Missouri in 1976, when I was 8. My world changed. It was not comfortable. I did not adjust to the move well. California kid, suddenly transplanted to the heartland, and I could imagine better things. I could imagine things that made me happier. That's kind of where it kicked up. And it caused problems. Between my social maladjustment and learning disabilities that I had that people didn't have words for in 1976, much less 1980 or a few years after, I was always a little bit on the out. I was always a little bit off from the rest of the kids. I had exertion asthma as a kid. I still have exertion asthma. I hadn't heard of exertion asthma in 1980. And if you're at a school, particularly a parochial school in the Midwest at the end of the 70s, early 80s, there are sports and you're going to participate in sports. And if you suddenly stop breathing in the middle of this activity, everyone just assumes you're lazy and don't want to do it. And didn't want to do it because I stopped breathing. And things just kind of spiraled downward. I daydreamed. It got to be a little bit of a problem. Anything that you do to protect yourself mentally can be overdone to the point where it turns from a defense mechanism into an issue. And I had issues. And I had some people trying very hard to help me with those who didn't understand what those issues were. So they tried to treat me for issues that they wanted to treat me for, regardless of what those issues were. Long story short, I adapted. Role-playing games helped me a lot. Being able to get the images in my head out and have people walk around in my mental landscape and kick the tires and shoot things and blow stuff up really gave me a sense of purpose and completeness and met the world inside to the world outside. And that's why I write role-playing games and role-playing material to this day. So, cancer. Sitting in a recliner, a very comfortable recliner with an ocean view for 8 hours at a time, while an IV is dripping things into your body that other people can't be near. There's a lot of warnings when you're taking chemotherapy, most of which is people need to stay away from you for a few days after you've had a session because you're sweating poison. And on a lot of painkillers, I put in music and I listened and thought, imagined. Cancer was my opponent. I wrote a role-playing supplement. You may have seen me post about it, called Beat the Squamous. It's a pay-what-you-want product on RPG Now. It wasn't really meant to be a big moneymaker or super popular. It was me putting my feelings about my cancer on paper, in pictures, and throwing it out there in the language of role-playing games so that other people could help me beat up the cancer inside me. Because I did that every day. I did that for 8, 10, sometimes 16 hours a day. Longer when I couldn't sleep. Wasn't always very clear. It wasn't always brilliant imagery or perfect writing. Sometimes it was just mindless lashing out. And there's something that I lost in that process. Well, no. There's something I gave up in that process. Normally, usually, up until that point in time, when I imagined combat, when I imagined plenty of kung fu or running gun battles or whatever, there was always an undercurrent of mercy, of strategy, of honor, of beating an opponent, but not beating an opponent so bad that their soul was crushed, of perhaps turning an opponent into an ally, or the highest form of martial arts is turning an enemy into a friend. And that's always themes that I kept in my mind. All those things were secondary to the worlds and characters inside my head. But this was cancer. And fuck cancer. You fight against cancer with medicine, or in your mind, in visualizations, or in any way. There's no mercy. There can be no mercy. There is no let or hindrance. There is no quarter asked and none given. Cancer's there to kill you. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with, and it absolutely will not stop until it is destroyed or you are. I fancied myself Uncle Drac. And I faced Uncle Drac facing cancer. He handled it differently than I did. But he beat it. If you're really interested, leave me a note in the comments. I wrote a short story about how I envisioned Uncle Drac getting past cancer. I should publish it at some point in time anyway, but if you want a preview of it, just let me know. It was merciless. It was ruthless. And it carried me through. My cancer isn't just in remission. It didn't just stop being cancer. It's gone. It's dead. It's been destroyed. I have a fairly high percentage of acquiring another form of cancer in the short term because of the treatments, and because once you've had cancer, there's a likelihood that you'll get cancer again. You're more susceptible or more likely to encounter it in your life. But it ain't there now. Now, I have to credit an awful lot of chemicals, a bunch of radioactive lasers, some very talented people putting those chemicals and those lasers in the right spot, an entire team of nurses that made sure I didn't die of dehydration and that my red cell count stayed up. Quick aside, Torrance Memorial Hospital has a department called Short Stay. It is a place where you are admitted to the hospital, but only for a few hours. It's for things like rehydrations and transfusions, things that you don't need to be there overnight, but while you're there, you're a patient of the hospital, just as though you were staying there for a few days. And if you need medicine, they talk to a doctor and you get the medicine right there, right then. No, go see a pharmacy. Now, they take care of you like you're a patient in the hospital, because you are. My last day at Short Stay, because I was there a lot, I brought in a 5-pound box of chocolates from See's Candies and gave that with my love to that nursing staff, because those people took terrible events in my life and made them somewhere I could smile. And even when I couldn't talk, there was always a pleasant word, and they treated me amazingly well. And if ever you are ill or need assistance, you could do a lot worse than to end up where I was at. And I credit all of these people with the care, concern, technology, and techniques that brought me to a state of health. But I gotta give Uncle Drac some credit too, because he whomped ass on cancer like you would not believe. He whomped ass on cancer so hard that I have to bring him back. You may have noticed over this shoulder. That is Uncle Drac's new coat. I commissioned it from my wife, who is an amazingly talented seamstress, and she has been working very hard on it, because it has some technical aspects to it that she'd never dealt with before. And frankly, I've been doing theater costuming for decades, and I've never seen stuff done like have been done in that coat before. Oh, you'll see more of it. Uncle Drac's coming back. 'Cause I owe him. But back on point, as if I can. Once you have abandoned concepts of mercy and restraint and honor in your inner fights, it's hard to get them back again. I have to apologize to a couple of people who watch these, I hope. Josh, Al, Mike, Brian, Vic. I've been letting loose the energy left over from that fight through my characters and in my games. Therapy. It allows me to let it loose here and not someplace else, not on my family or in my work or at school. And I start classes again tomorrow, taking some more digital art, with results of which you will also no doubt see here. And I need to start angling myself back towards where I was at before and put back in place some things I removed for survival's sake. I'm not fighting for my survival anymore. I'm fighting for my recovery. This is tea. It is not my usual drink. I need to be drinking a lot more water. I don't eat as much as I should. There are people who are working very hard to see to it that I feed myself properly. Our relationship with food is different. There's 100 things I have to overcome still. Oh, yeah, you may have noticed the hair. A lot of the length of the hair that I had was still crispy and poorly textured. And it was full of the remnants of the radiation and the chemotherapy. And I'm going bald-ish, shall we say. It's a family trait. So I went to get my hair cut at a wonderful professional salon just at Del Amo Mall, 188 Men's Salon. Kind of place where you go in and they will pour you a glass of their microbrew to relax with while you're waiting for your chair to get empty. And the stylist talked me into something different. I've never pictured myself like this. I've never seen myself like this. The long hair has been part of my identity for a very long time. But I get to keep this style longer than I would have kept the long hair. It's going to put less strain on the scalp and allow me to have something resembling volume for a little bit longer. And it got rid of the last physical vestiges of the treatments. Well, the last external ones. A certain amount of that ruthlessness isn't necessarily a bad thing. Drives me forward and makes me push myself a little bit harder because I don't have any mercy for myself either. Maybe I need a little bit more, but pushing myself isn't bad. I've had plenty of time off and it's time to get some things actually accomplished, working on it. But this is a time to consider reassembly, putting myself back together. And I have a unique opportunity here. I can choose what to put myself back together with. I don't have the kind of food cravings that I had in 2015. I could, I suppose, sit down to a plate of nachos with fried chicken, or a hamburger bigger than my head from Fuddruckers, and there's still kind of a that sounds good in the back of my head, but I don't have the room for it, and I don't have the machinery to process it, and I don't have the real desire for it. I can pick and choose what goes in to make myself out of. I can pick and choose what activities I use to build myself back up with. I walked. There's a 7-Eleven exactly 2 blocks in either direction from my house. They just built a new one. So I needed to have some stuff for school, and I wanted something to drink while I recorded this, so a walk. Walking's good for you. I work out at home, and I'm getting back to the gym. And what I put back together in here, building up a few more skills and taking on some challenges that I haven't taken on before, doing things differently than I have. Because I've got to rewire stuff anyway, so why not put in more stuff and see if I can't just make myself more capable than I was before. You have to have a certain amount of ruthlessness to take the person that you were and put them back together, but better. Well, that has been a bit of a rant and personal journey through where I have been and where I am at. Thank you for following along. Appreciate you watching and following along, and the apologies that I gave to those folks who are running games for me or who are in games with me are quite genuine. I don't intend to play those characters differently anytime soon, but maybe characters I generate in the future will be a little bit more tempered by mercy. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy the video, go ahead and give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you'd like to see that little short story I wrote on Uncle Drac and how he dealt with the situation I was in, or if you have any comments or questions, if you had personal journeys of your own that you would like to share, leave me a comment, for God's sake, please. Questions, comments, suggestions, things you'd like to hear me talk about in the future, leave me a comment. You'll love leaving me a comment. I'll love getting one. If you'd like to see these videos when they come out, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you hit the subscribe button, there's a little bell next to it. Hit that too, so you get the notifications when my videos come out. If you really dug the video, I invite you to hit me up at my Patreon page at www.patreon.com and consider donating. Absolutely everything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much again for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me, and I will talk to you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.